everybody, and thanks for joining us for our weekly media availability. I'll turn over to the members for some opening remarks, and then we'll get after your questions. So members, go ahead.
Great. Representing the 3rd Legislative District in Spokane, and have the honor of serving as the Senate Majority Leader, and joined by our Deputy Majority Leader, Senator Manka Dhingra, as well. We're getting into the final weeks of the session, and I have been thinking back to just before the session when we were doing our practices for the floor and setting up how the committees were going to work and all of our other meetings, and just wondering if we were going to be able to pass anything and whether we were even going to be able to make it work. And I'm just so thankful to the hard work of all of our staff, the participation of the public, the good work and flexibility by the members and legislators, that we've not just been able to function, but we've actually had a historic session so far, passing really meaningful legislation on climate action and childcare, on certainly COVID relief, both from a health perspective and a business perspective, small business relief, tax reform, police accountability, major steps forward in broadband, and so many other areas I can't even mention here for time purposes. And that's exciting to see that progress on behalf of the people of Washington State. But our work's not done. We've got a couple big things we need to get done. We need to pass 3 budgets at least. The negotiations on all are going well. And we have a few other significant policies to get done, both on concurrence and a few other policies that are important, that a lot of work is going into, that we need to move forward for our state. So excited about what's happened so far, and I think we're set up for a strong finish, and look forward to your questions, and I'll send it over to Speaker Jenkins.
Thanks, Senator Billig. I'm Laurel Jenkins. I represent the 27th District. I'm Speaker of the House, and Monica Stonier, our floor leader and who represents the 49th District, is joining me today. I echo everything that Senator Billig has said. We moved, I think, 150 or so, maybe a little bit more, Senate bills off of the floor during this second half before cutoff. We were highly productive, and we House Democrats came into this session saying that we really wanted to do 4 things. We wanted to respond to COVID. We wanted to address economic recovery. We wanted to address racial equity and address the existential threat of climate change. We are very far into doing all 4 of those things, and we're feeling great about both House bills and Senate bills. Excited about the concurrence process, but more so this budget process. I was reminded before we started this session that really there was only one absolute thing that we had to do this session, which was to pass an operating budget. We're actually now, after all of this, we're getting to the one thing that we absolutely have to do. And there are many other things we still want to do and are still working on, but excited about the work, excited about the collaboration I think that the House and Senate has had, even in these really unusual circumstances. I think we're working very well together. And like always, we don't 100% agree on everything, but there will be a lot more things over the concurrence process that we find spaces to agree on. So excited about the work ahead, and happy to answer questions.
All right, great. First, we'll go to Rachel LaCourte with the Associated Press. Rachel, go ahead.
Hi, I joined a little late, so apologies if you addressed this earlier, but just wanted to know where things stood on low carbon fuel standard bill, and then also if there's any sort of updated time frame on when we might see a final budget plan.
Well, I guess since the low carbon fuel standard is over here in the House, I'll just say that I think Chair Fitzgibbon, he's the prime sponsor of the bill too, is working very heavily with folks in the Senate on how it came over from the Senate. I think there's some interest in going to conference and figuring out what our common space is on low carbon fuel standards, but we're very happy that the Senate sent it over here and excited to do work around that. And I think, Rachel, what day is Sine Die? A week from Sunday. That's the final budget will be done. We're planning by then.
I know, but in the past, it's not always been a great idea when you release to the media the plan the same day that you pass it. Are you saying that that's what you're planning to do this year, or will we see a plan more than 10 hours before you guys actually pass it on the floor on the last day of session?
You'll see a plan, from my perspective, you'll see a plan when we get a final budget negotiated. Could be tomorrow. I think that's doubtful. I just would say it's very doubtful. It could be much closer to the end.
Rachel, you have a follow?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, next we'll go to Jerry Cornfield with the Everett Herald. Jerry, go ahead.
Let me start, if I could, with the Senate. If I get an update, I see Senator Dingler there as well. What's the plan and timing for the Blake reform legislation?
Well, we continue to have really great conversations with the House, with Senate members. I think it's really important to make sure that we're taking a look at treatment options, taking a look at the way equity and racial justice plays into this policy, and really seeing where we can get 25 votes in the Senate to send it to the House. I think there definitely is an interest in making sure the Senate acts this week so that the House has a week to do this work. So we continue to have lots of conversations, lots of collaboration, and I'm hopeful we'll see something on the floor this week in the Senate.
Jerry, you have a follow-up?
Yes, I guess to the Speaker Jenkins, you had mentioned how well the two chambers are working together, but at this stage, low carbon fuel standard, 5 senators essentially sent a letter demanding that the low carbon fuel standard bill not be touched. Cap and trade arrived really late, I believe, in your opinion, and it's just getting its first hearing tomorrow. There's no transportation budget. We just heard that there may not be a Blake reform bill. So I'm wondering, are you concerned by the slow pace of the Senate majority to get your chamber big bills and time to actually work on them? Or, and I guess Senator Billig, the slowpoke Senate, just hoping the House will agree with everything you send over, and that's why you're waiting so late?
Jerry, I don't even know how to answer a question put to me like that, actually, but no, that's not a frustration. I mean, obviously, all of those bills and all of this work has challenge to it, and we'll keep on working through it. And, you know, for example, it is true on cap and invest, because we have a session in which we didn't do companion bills. We tried to avoid that, to not have our staff work to the bone on companion bills and use our time that way. That bill has been less socialized over here. But have we been talking about this all along? Yes. Low carbon fuel standards has been discussed a lot. Our teams on Blake are talking back and forth, not just every day, but multiple times a day. So can I predict that we'll find a common spot on every single one of those? And in the end, I don't know that yet, but it's not as though we're not talking and working together. So so this, you know, it's a very unusual session. I'm really proud of the work that we've already done. And I think that there's actually additional good work that we're going to see done because of the collaboration that we've got. So, it does make it hard in ways, but I think frustrated is too strong of a word for me.
Yeah,
Jerry, I just have to say in here, slowpoke Senate, really?
well,
And it's not silos. It's not like when we're working on a bill, we're not speaking to anyone in the House about it. There's a lot of collaboration that goes on and a lot of conversations that go on, but come on.
yeah. And it's definitely not intentional to be slow. It is intentional to be deliberative, to get input, to have transparency, to have lots of opportunity for all voices to be heard. And you can call it whatever you want, but I think it's responsible. And, these are big policies that we are debating that are going to impact generations of Washingtonians. And we want to make sure we get them right.
And next we'll go to Hanna Scott with Cairo Radio. Hannah, go ahead.
Hi, probably for Senator Dingra, following up on Jerry's question about Blake. So there, if I understood correctly, then there's a chance that nothing gets passed in this session for Blake. Can you speak at all to what that looks like? I know that's not what prosecutors want to see, and what you're doing to make sure that doesn't happen.
No, that's a really good question because, when I spoke about this bill, my first question was, do we need a statewide response? And overwhelmingly, the answer to that has been yes. And not just from the prosecutors. I think that's true from individuals, from everyone in the criminal justice system, because otherwise you end up with a system where you cross the street and you could be in unincorporated county versus a city and you have different drug laws. So I think if the state does not act, there is the opportunity for there really to be this crisscross of drug laws across our state, and enforceability is extremely uncertain. And frankly, one of the main reasons why I would love to see a statewide Blake response is for the treatment. We do know that treatment works. Access to treatment through multiple venues outside of the criminal justice system works. And this is really an incredible opportunity for us to respond with lots of treatment, and treatment that we've had in certain pockets of our state that has shown to be effective, and making sure that those effective treatments we are offering statewide.
Hannah, do you have a follow-up?
I do. And again, sorry, this is for Senator Dingra. I caught yesterday's Ways and Means Committee meeting, and there was quite a bit done on the 988 bill. Can you speak about that and what it's looking like right now?
Absolutely. I love that bill so much. We got it out of Ways and Means, so I am also hopeful that we will be able to get it off the Senate floor. And to me, our police accountability bills are Blake, 988. They all work together, and they work together to ensure that a behavioral health crisis is not illegal. And in our state, we treat it like it is, right? If you are in crisis, what do? You call 911. We're going to have the option that when you truly have a behavioral health crisis, when working around suicide prevention, you can call 988. So you actually get a therapeutic public health response to the crisis you're having. I'm very optimistic and excited about 988. And I'll just say that. I'm very excited in making sure that gets across the finish line.
And let me just add on this, I talked to Rep. Orwell yesterday, just after she had spent a fair amount of time with Representative Cody and Senator Dingra talking about the way it was looking in Ways and Means and coming out, and she was very pleased with it. So this is just another example of how members are working across the body as they see their bills moving and updating each other. So I think she was quite pleased to hear how it's moving in the Senate.
And I have daily conversations on the Blake bill, and I have daily conversations on the 988 bill. Luckily, the daily conversations on the protection order bill have now stopped.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, because, and I think Senator Dingra answered this, but I just want to be really clear, just because of a reference that both Jerry and Hannah made about somehow Blake maybe not happening. We are moving on this. Our goal is to pass a bill out of the Senate, hopefully this week. We still have work to do, but there are very productive conversations going on across the aisle and across the rotunda, and we are working to pass something.
Okay, up next we will go to Austin Jenkins with the Northwest News Network. Austin, go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. Speaker Jenkins, two questions about two bills that do not appear to have advanced. One is the Senate bill having to do with harassment of election officials, and just wondering why that didn't advance, especially in light of the fact that one of our top election officials was the subject of a threat last year. And then, given the focus on equity, why did Representative Tomiko Santos' I-200 repeal bill not advance this year?
Well, and Rep. Stonier might want to talk about this too, since she's been our floor leader. Austin, I think Rep. Santos's bill didn't make it out of committee. I don't know. I haven't followed that. But I mean, I think we passed over 40 bills on racial equity off of the House floor. So not every bill that had to do with racial equity moved forward. But I think it would be it probably isn't right to just pick one out and say, well, because this bill didn't move, then there's really not work happening in this area, or it somehow kind of disproves all the work that's happened. So there's lots of, I have not studied Rep. Santos's bill, nor was I part of our caucus conversations, if we had them, about the Hunt bill. So I guess I'd kick it to Rep. Stonier and see if she recollects any of the conversations there.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with the speaker that, there has been such a broad approach to dealing with the inequities in our state, institutionally and otherwise, across the board. And I think that's been clear in introductions of bills in the House and the Senate. That I obviously, as you know, Representative Santos has been working on this issue of equity for a very long time, and I don't see her letting up on that at any point in time. And our caucus continues to learn from her leadership. There were several other members of our caucus in this last session who have taken up some of this work as well and have introduced similar bills. And so I think as we move into this next section, or the next session, we'll probably revisit this again. But as the speaker just mentioned, looking at equity in contracting, in business, in health access, in education, all across the board has been a big effort across the body. So I don't think it's any indication that there's a slowness in moving on that.
And I would be remiss not to say that we passed the first ever statewide Office of Equity last session, and I was so proud to champion that bill across the finish line. The executive director was just hired about a month ago. And so equity work is not work you do in one session and be done. This is something we continue to do in our daily lives. And I'm very excited to see what the Office of Equity does, how they pursue all of these issues. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that work continue as well.
Austin, do you have a follow?
No, thanks.
All right. Next, we'll go to Laurel Demkovich with the Spokesman Review. Laurel.
Thanks, Aaron. This is probably for both Senator Billig and Speaker Jenkins. On the Representative Riccelli's bill, the Comprehensive Health District, it passed out of the Senate, but the whole regional comprehensive district part was kind of stripped out of it. So I'm wondering from Senator Billig if you could talk at all about kind of what happened in your caucus for that to have happened. And then for the speaker, if you can talk about, I guess, your thoughts on that and if you think that version will end up passing the House.
Great, thanks for the question. So, that's a bill it's an important bill anytime, but especially with some of the lessons that we've learned from this pandemic. And Representative Riccelli has done incredible work on this bill, and so has Senator Robinson. They've worked together on it. She had the companion in the Senate. This bill went through the process that so many bills go through. There's different views, and in the end, it did get reworked a little bit on the floor, but it also got bipartisan. So there was, I think, a little bit of give and take, and something that happens because of our cutoff deadlines. Sometimes things happen a little bit faster and not quite as precise just because there's a deadline, and that one passed right at the end, I think, with less than an hour to go before cutoff. So there may be some more discussions as we go through the concurrence process just to make sure that we got it exactly right in those last few moves. But I think we can all be proud that we got a bill across the finish line, or it looks like we'll get it across the finish line, that helps to improve local public health response. It helps to provide more resources and support, and it does so in a bipartisan way. And so I think there's a lot to be proud of there.
Yeah, I think, the bill that's coming across from the Senate, I haven't had a chance to study it deeply, but it sounds like it'll be primarily the governance portion of the original bill and then kind of study on some of the other things. I think I would echo what Senator Billig said. The way this bill started and the way it moved off of the House floor and the work done by Rep. Riccelli and Senator Robinson was fairly extraordinary. And Representative Riccelli was really on a fast track to learning a lot about local public health as he went through this. I think that, to me, one of the issues that I've heard again and again that people have questions about is local health really does feel like there's some value in regionalization because, for example, small health districts don't have enough resources to even pay for or the ability to hire a partial epidemiologist. Well, every local health department needs that. If we regionalized that kind of work, it would provide more access for people to have that over bigger geographic regions. But how you make that happen, I think this is one of those challenges where the devil is really in the details. And honestly, our local health jurisdictions probably did not have a lot of time to be working on this in great detail this year because they do have a couple of other things that they're actually also working on, like getting people vaccinated and trying to prevent people from getting coronavirus.
I would just add from Southwest Washington, I know it's been really important to be talking about how we include public health experts in the decision making that happens at a local level. And this bill, in addition to Rep. Riccelli's other bill that was incorporated, really helped spark that conversation. So I think not only are we looking at the wins and the governance part of it, but just the full conversation locally about whether or not we have public health experts on a body advising the body that makes decisions for a local government when it comes to, I don't know, the rollout of a pandemic or perhaps a measles outbreak, as we've seen here in this region. It makes me feel far more comfortable when our public health experts are seen as a resource and as a guiding light in that decision making. And I think that conversation has really come forward in the debate and evolution of Rep. Riccelli's bill.
Laurel, do you have a follow-up?
I do briefly, probably for Senator Dingra, but if the Blake fix doesn't happen this session, which may or may not happen, where does that kind of, I guess, leave the state in terms of fixing it? Is that just a wait until next session, or is there anything else you're talking about doing before then?
And I think this is where we have to make sure that we're doing the investments in behavioral health. We have a very robust behavioral health investment already in our budget, funding stabilization units, crisis diversion, doing mobile teams. And so we do have the infrastructure for treatment. And if we are unable to pass a Blake bill in the Senate this session, which I really hope is not the case, the treatment components are there, and I think we just have to be really smart about making sure we are getting people the treatment and the help that they need. What happens in the criminal justice realm is going to be interesting because, as we all know, our courts are extremely backed up. And so I'm really not sure what's going to happen in terms of prosecutions, arrests. But on the behavioral health side, we're going to continue to work on that. We have federal dollars coming in that have come in terms of treatment dollars and substance use disorder dollars, and really making sure we're working with HCA, Department of Health, and ensuring that we are able to get as many people into treatment when they're ready for treatment.
Laurel, I just want to add really quickly, there isn't kind of the Blake solution. There is a beginning to the Blake solution, and this will probably take, especially when we start to think about treatment, we have a long way to build to the level that we think we need to get to. And so there's the beginning of it, and then in years coming, forward, there will be many more things that we do, that we add on here.
All right, up next we will go to Melissa Santos with Crosscut. Melissa, go ahead.
Hey, so so you said the budget negotiations are going well. Transportation budget and package, that's going well as well. I think, is that actually happening? And then I guess my question is, how crucial is it to get agreement on carbon pricing, cap and trade versus a carbon tax to get a transportation package passed this year? And how is the House feeling about the cap and trade bill the Senate passed over?
Well, I can just take the first part about the budgets because I think that's a follow up to something I'd said earlier. So, in transportation, there are really two budgets. When I refer to the ongoing negotiations and the making progress, it was primarily talking about the operating budget, the capital budget, and the current law transportation budget, which is not simple because we do have some revenue decreases from lower gas taxes and other collections. So it is a tricky budget to get done, even the current law budget. The transportation package discussions are continuing. Obviously, there's Senator Hobbs and the Senate Transportation Committee has had action this week, but the discussions are still going. Whether we get there or not before the end of session is still an open question.
Yeah, and I think that the House, we are happy that the cap and invest bill came over. Certainly, yes, there's going to need to be an agreement about cap and invest versus carbon pricing if you put those in juxtaposition. Although I guess they're really very close to the same place on the continuum, right? And we're going to work very hard on the cap and invest bill since that's what came over. And I do think the cap and invest bill is pretty important for a transportation package because the investments in many of the multimodal things that folks want to do and many of the carbon reducing things that people want to do would come from that bill. So it is a very, I think, a fairly central element that we're working on.
Melissa, do you have a follow?
Yeah, actually for Representative Stonier, how important is it to you and folks in your district to get this transportation package passed or get a transportation package passed that includes the Columbia River Bridge or Columbia River Crossing or whatever we're calling it nowadays?
Well, for the last several years, Melissa, as you can guess, we have not had a public meeting, a private meeting with our city, our constituents, our county, our business community, a town hall where this question did not come up and where we were not put on point for delivering for Southwest Washington a bridge that keeps people moving. The history of whether or not there's been unification in our delegation down here has obviously evolved, as I know you've watched, and I'm just incredibly pleased to be at a point in time right now where we have almost our entire delegation in full support of focusing on the I-5 crossing first and foremost, that both the chairs in the House and the Senate have come to visit Southwest Washington, talk with the community, recognize this as not only a statewide, but a national priority for commerce, safety, and transportation. And both chairs have, from the House and the Senate, have been incredibly dedicated to making sure that this bridge is in whatever package comes forward. So yeah, it is not a question that doesn't get asked, not just by the press, but by constituents. So we're looking forward to arriving at an agreement on a package.
Hey, you all, my apologies. I have a conflicting meeting that starts at 12:30, so I'm going to hop off. I don't know if the others can stay on and finish your questions, but I unfortunately am going to leave, and I have confidence that Rep. Stonier can answer any questions that I could have answered.
All right. We'll keep going forward here. So up next, we got Leo Brine with Publicola. Leo, go ahead.
Hi there, representatives. Thanks, Aaron. I was wondering, what is the House's plan for the wealth tax?
Thank you for that question. So as we move into this last couple of weeks of time where we are going to have very limited hearing time, I know that Representative Frame, the chair of the Finance Committee, and that team has been working on trying to determine how that proposal may fit into this package this year or into our work this year. I don't believe that there's a clear idea of how that's going to look, but I'm sure that Representative Frame will be able to answer that question. It's definitely been a topic of conversation, but we are solely focused on the investments that we think are going to make the biggest difference and where our constituents know what we are delivering for that investment. And I think when you look at the discussion that both caucuses have had on the capital gains, you can see that we know we have to tell constituents what we're delivering. And if that means a statewide childcare effort, we know that our constituents would be supportive of delivering in that way. So we're going to continue making sure that when we talk about those types of investments, we can also ensure what we're delivering for it.
Leo, do you have a follow?
No, thank you.
Okay. Up next, we'll go to Sara Gentzler with McClatchy. Sarah, go ahead.
This is following on the Blake question. So for Senator Dingra, with the goal in mind to get this out of the full Senate this week, what are the sticking points in the majority regarding your bill, and what consensus might be reached in the next few days that seemingly couldn't be reached on Saturday when the bill was sent to rules without recommendation?
You know, the things that people, and especially, a lot of people don't deal in the criminal justice arena or in the behavioral health arena. I happen to cross both of those subjects. I think there is uncertainty on individuals on whether this, whether drug possession should be a criminal offense or not. Whether, if it is a criminal offense, should it be a felony or a gross misdemeanor? And I think those are the things that concern people. I think overwhelmingly, Washingtonians, elected officials, regardless of political parties, believe that individuals need treatment. We've seen that over and over again. That is a widely held belief that people need treatment. So one of the other sticking points is, how do they access this treatment? Now, in the 27 years that when drug courts first started, we've been moving away from access to treatment being through the criminal justice system. In fact, in the last 3 years, we've done significant investments in opening up opportunities for treatment outside of the criminal justice system. So I think that's another sticking point, is where there are some people who still feel that access to treatment should go through the criminal justice system. I definitely feel it needs to be available outside of the criminal justice system. And then, of course, you have the second sticking point is that if it does go through the criminal justice system, whether it's going to be at the gross misdemeanor level or at the felony level.
Sarah, you have a follow-up?
Sure, this is a different topic, but there are several police accountability bills that were sent back to their original chambers for concurrence, and I'm curious if you feel any of those are likely to go to conference, or if you feel that there's pretty good consensus in the original chambers on the amendments.
So I know that we have a police accountability team, basically the chair of the Law and Justice Committee, the vice chair of Law and Justice Committee, which is me, and the same on public safety in the House. And we again meet weekly to discuss these bills. I think the vast majority of them, I think concurrences would be just fine. There are a couple we just have to double check, make sure the amendments work with other bills, and then you can merge the statutes appropriately. So there may be some technical cleanup and making sure that they all work together. But the vast majority of them, I am looking forward to the concurrence process and having them sent to the governor's office.
And I would agree and just only add that, if these policies and negotiation on these policies were easy, we would have done them a long time ago. And I think it's an incredibly strong sign of success and collaboration that even in a year when legislative session to just plain operate is such a challenge, the fact that we have not only delivered strong policy and now have a basis for good final conversations and heading into those last days of session is a huge success for the people of the state who have been impacted by this in the first place. But secondly, a lot of appreciation to the folks that have been working on this from before session even started. And I think that it is a real sign of success that we're going to be able to deliver in those final days, whether it's by a bill that is finalized or in concurrence. I think in conference, we're gonna be able to get there.
Okay, and up next we'll go to Joel Sullivan with the Seattle Times. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Rachel's question. The speaker's not here anymore, so I'd like to hear from Rep. Stoney and Senator Billig. It sounds like Democratic leadership has no commitment to release a budget 48 or even 24 hours publicly in advance of a vote for a budget that's is basically unprecedented. It's going to expend an extraordinary amount of money, including federal dollars. You guys aren't going to let the public and your fellow lawmakers see this thing for a little while? Is there any commitment on that?
I can start on that one. So we absolutely will release it as soon as we possibly can. And I think, Joe, you've seen over the last 3 years the increased transparency that we've brought to the budget process. We have implemented a 24-hour on the bar rule. We have implemented hearing rules where we don't hear the budget the same day that it's released. So we have an absolute commitment to transparency on the budget. Senator Rolfes has made that commitment. I have made that commitment. The budget teams are negotiating. They have a target to get done with those negotiations. I think it's Sunday night or Monday morning. And then it's going to take a few days for the nonpartisan staff to actually compile it all, and then it gets released. So the goal is, I mean, if we could release it today, we would. There's no intention to hold it. The intention is to release it at the earliest possible moment that is available. And certainly we're hoping that is going to be a couple days in advance, but it'll be as soon as we can.
And I'll just, remind you also that the bills passed in the legislature make up the bulk of that budget. So you've seen a lot of those investments, of the bulk of those investments, come through with a full public process of a hearing and being passed before the legislature in both chambers. So the final versions, of course, will have covering the delta between the House and the Senate. But when you watch the legislative session play out, you're watching the budget also form.
Yeah,
I want to follow up on what Rep. Stonier said. This is not a surprise that comes out of nowhere. I mean, we're passing these bills. We had the budget go through the Ways and Means Committee. We had it go off the Senate floor. The House did the same. So I know you guys know this. A lot of the viewers may not, but this has been an open budget policy discussion from the day we started session, based on every bill we've ever heard and the fiscal notes attached to it. So absolutely, the final budget, yes, as Majority Leader Billig said, we have systems in place to make sure there's transparency. But this is not something that's going to be a huge surprise to anybody.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that. But in two other notes, I just want to make just the update. The negotiations are going well. Everybody's getting along. The offer, it's like, I mean, it's very positive. So we have no reason to believe at this point that there's going to be a problem. So that's good news. And the other thing that also shows a commitment to transparency, there's a point where you have to wait to sort of hit the button to make it live until all the pretty reports are done. But we have shown since I've been Majority Leader, at least, we've actually brought the media in early to do a pre-briefing so that even before the actual documents are done, so that you're ready to help communicate to the public when they are released, so that it picks up some of that delay that would otherwise happen if you had to see it and then wait, hours before you released it. So we will make a commitment to do that again this year.
Well, and I think you've already seen versions of that. We've released budgets already, right? And we were real proud of those. And so I think that, what you're hearing is as soon as the budget is ready, it will be released, and versions that you've seen in the past are versions that we're pretty committed to. So it, again, will not be too much of a surprise.
Joe, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, for Senator Dingra, I may have misheard you on the Blake decision, but I think you said something like the elements of the treatment, what the state needs to do on treatment, or is in place for going forward. It just needs to be funded. But the way I understood Representative Days' House Bill 1499 was there was further infrastructure to build before you could go ahead and decriminalize drug possession. So can you walk me through how it seems like it has to be more on one end or the other end of that? And is any part of House Bill 1499 going to be included in your thoughts in a final product this year?
Absolutely. What an excellent question. I can talk about this for hours, but I won't, I promise. So, okay, I'm going to go back to your question to make sure I get it in a coherent manner. The Supreme Court did not give us planning time. The Supreme Court's like, here, happy birthday. And so So while we had the framework of Rep. Davis's bill, that had a 2-year ramp up. And that definitely had a much more thoughtful approach on how we get there in 2 years. I would love to incorporate a lot of those ideas into our Blake proposal and the bill moving forward. We also have to have an immediate response because of what the Supreme Court did. So absolutely, that planning, 2-year plan can continue, but then we have to have that response right away. And this is where I talk about, what are the things in our state that are currently working? And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the LEAD program, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. That is something we already have in 7 counties in our state. It has been working. It has shown to be working. And so to me, that is a component where we can just provide enough funding so that every county in our state has access to the LEAD program. That's what I mean by there's certain things that we can do right now that are treatment oriented. We also have the HOST program. I do not remember what HOST stands for. Homeless Outreach something teams. And again, that's a program that has been in existence in our state for a very long time. It is very limited. So again, in our budget, we can provide funding for those. And both those programs, have really great outcome measures. So that's what I mean in the sense of we already have some of it that we can provide additional funding. And then absolutely continue to go down the path that Rep. Davis sent out to really have a much more statewide concerted effort. So hopefully that gets to both of your questions.
Okay, up next, we'll go to Laura Mahoney with Bloomberg. Laura, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm hoping you can talk a little bit more about the capital gains tax bill, SB 5096. It passed the Senate, it's in the House Finance Committee. Are you still negotiating that? Are you expecting to amend it much before it goes to the floor and then back for concurrence? What's the status of that bill? And that's separate from Rep. Frame's wealth tax bill. So I just want to, and so if you have any updates on that in addition to what you've already said on the wealth tax bill as well. But mostly I'm interested in the capital gains tax status.
Yeah, well, I'll just say it's booked in both the House and Senate budget. So the expectation is that it will pass. I think I don't know what the specific details are, but I mean, we still have 10 days left and it's a big bill. So I think they're being careful to make sure that everything is the way that it needs to be and that the votes are there and that we pass it. But certainly, at least from the Senate side, it's in our budget, booked in our budget.
And the same in the House. And, we've been talking about this for a long time in terms of, recognizing that cap gains gives us an opportunity to undo the income inequality we see in our tax code at this time while we have some support from the federal government during this recovery phase. And so when we come back as an economy and as a state, we can do it in a way that doesn't continuously burden those who are at the lowest end of the income brackets. And so we see this as a real important long-term focus for the state. And I think you'll see that both chambers are going to stay committed to that. This next week, there's a lot of discussion on the House side now that we have the bill. And I think you'll see that we're just head down focused on making sure that that work gets done in the Finance Committee.
Well, and just one other thing, and I think Rep. Stonier alluded to this. I mean, what's important to focus on is what this also pays for. So we're going to make historic advancements in childcare, which is so important for families and children and employers in this state. And really exciting, on Sunday, as one of our last bills, we passed the Working Families Tax Credit. That's a lot of years in work, and we are going to help. That directly helps make the tax code more fair. We're going to help tens of thousands of families, actually more than that. I think it's 400,000 families that are going to get a little help to get ahead and boost the economy because of the Working Families Tax Credit, which is paid in part by the capital gains tax.
Laura, do you have a follow-up?
Well, you just kind of answered my follow-up, but how central is the enacting capital gains tax to funding these other priorities, childcare and the working families tax credit?
Well, it's important. I mean, I think that what happens is something's got to give if the revenue's not there. So one of these investments is substance abuse counseling. Is it childcare? Is it K-12? Is it higher ed? Is it foster care support, healthcare, COVID response? So if all of the funding that is booked is essential for all of those really meaningful investments, which are going to help small business and families in Washington State. And so it is important to all of those investments.
And it's central because it's going to be important to right the challenges that we've had in this state before the pandemic. We were in a childcare crisis before the pandemic. We were the worst state in taxes for lowest income people before the pandemic. So we know that this is, like I said before, a long-term goal for making sure that Washington has a stronger economy than we did before the pandemic, and we're strongly positioned to do that now.
All right, up next we'll go to Michael Goldberg from The Wire. Michael, go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. This is for Representative Stonier and Senator Billig. There has seemingly been some disagreement between Representative Hansen and Senator Wellman over their broadband bills. Senator Wellman said that Rep. Hansen's Public Broadband Act was, quote, constructed without input or even consultation with the strategic plan of the state broadband office. And other Senate Democrats raised concern about the bill potentially sidestepping the statewide broadband office. They also both amended each other's bills on the floor. So I'm just wondering what your position is on the different approaches put forth in each bill.
Well, I'll just start by saying that again, the commitment to delivering on broadband for the state should be clear in the fact that both chambers passed the bills. We know that we have some closing of the gap to do here in the last bit, and we are committed to doing that. I will say, Representative Hackney, one of our newest members, worked through the capital budget on a significant body of work to in partnership with the broadband office. So from the House perspective, I would say it may have been demonstrated in a couple of different ways and not necessarily in that one single bill. But all, again, to just say that when we get to the closing days here, we can pull together the highest impact for the state and the best elements of each of those bills and efforts for a final product for Washington having better broadband access across the state.
Yeah, and I just agree with all of that. I mean, I'm sure, like in many policies, different legislators have different approaches to the same goal. And in this case, the goal is so clear, which is to expand broadband. It's so important for education, for healthcare, for running a business. It's important to everyday life. And when you look at these two bills plus the capital investments, it's really an extraordinary step forward. Representative Stonier mentioned the House capital budget, Senate capital budget, same thing, $400 million investment in broadband. This is dramatic step forward. And I think it's something that we're going to look back in a few years and even realize more how significant this session was to expanding broadband access.
And I'll just add, in terms of the amendments on the floor, they were really done to make sure that the two bills can work together. And so that's what you'll see, is that they are able to technically work together, be merged in statutes together. And frankly, we just want to make sure we are not leaving any of the federal dollars on the table. And so with both bills passing, we're going to make sure we're leveraging all our state dollars, all our federal dollars, so more Washingtonians can have access to broadband and have access to the speed that they need.
Michael, do you have a follow?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, next we'll go to Rich Smith from The Stranger. Rich, go ahead.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm not sure who this is for, but the House Housing Committee striker on 5160, that tenant bill from Cooterer, ends the governor's eviction moratorium on June 30th. but tenant advocates say that renters will need more time to access rental assistance and other programs to stay housed ahead of what they expect to be a tsunami of evictions. Is leadership committed to making sure that the moratorium ends on June 30th, keeping that language in there?
Well, we're less focused on dates where moratoriums end and more focused on making sure people can be housed. And the investments we are making in the budget and in policy, I think, demonstrate that commitment. So I think our full and honest answer on housing is making sure that whether the moratorium ends on any particular date, that we have funding in place, we have housing coming online, and we have protections so that families are not evicted for reasons outside of their control, whether it be as a function of the pandemic and not being able to pay rent, or not being able to access other forms of care and resources that they need. But we've also invested quite a bit in making sure that there are landlord protections as well, and resources for those housing providers that are also going without their needed income to keep that housing in place as well. And we've, I think, taken a very comprehensive approach to make sure that regardless of what date a moratorium ends, the people of Washington, more people of Washington, have someplace warm and safe to lay their heads at night.
Do you have a follow-up?
But just if Billig wants to weigh in, I'd be happy to hear.
Yeah, we're looking on that bill and all of the bills. We're looking at the amendments that were done in the House to decide how to move forward, and working with our chairs on that. I mean, I just want to say more globally is that bill plus Representative Macri's Just Cause bill plus the investments in the Housing Trust Fund, the other capital budget investments. I mean, this is, you look at, it's hard. I mean, in any other year, we would look at what we've done in housing and said, this is incredible. This is the central focus of everything we've done. It's only because we've done also so much in so many other areas that it doesn't necessarily have the spotlight alone. But it is really dramatic and necessary, not just because of the pandemic, but this was a crisis before the pandemic as well. And so I'm quite proud of the steps that we've taken. The details on the amendments on 5160 we're going to work through in the next couple of days.
Okay, and we have time for one last question, and we're going to go back to Melissa Santos from Crosscut. Melissa, go ahead.
Hey, I just was wondering, do you guys think we don't know what a budget like proviso is? Because in the capital budget last year, you literally decided to demolish the press houses in a last minute amendment. So I guess my question is, do you really think that having a budget come out at the very, very end is in the best service of the public?
No, and our goal is not to have them come out at the last minute. Our goal is to get them done as soon as possible. And that is what we're efforting towards. The Constitution gives us 105 days to get the budget done. We have to wait until the last revenue forecast, and then that revenue forecast starts a clock. That clock ends on the 105th day, and so we move as fast as possible in that time. Things are going well, but there are just some actual physical limitations once the agreement is done to actually compile it all into a bill. These are pages and pages of hundreds of pages of technical language that needs to be reviewed and double checked so that some error isn't made that dramatically affects something in our state in a negative way, and make sure everything is totally dialed in, and then it's released. And the goal is to release it as soon as possible. You can see, what we've done in the past. The old rule was you release a budget and you hear it the next day. We don't do that anymore. We release it on a Friday and let it sit over the weekend. If people told us we were crazy to do that, but we did it because of transparency. That's our goal, is to have it out as soon as possible. There's no effort to do anything less than that. And you will be the first to see it as well.
And I can say the same for the House. We fully intend, as soon as the document is completed, to release it as soon as possible. And that's not in service to waiting to the last second, but in service to making sure that the document you all have to review and that our members have to review is accurate and complete. And I think that solves a lot of questions that come up when there are errors. So we want to make sure that it's a flawless document as much as possible. and then release it as soon as possible. Those two things I think are top goals.
Melissa, you all set?
Yes, I just would comment that intricacies sometimes benefit from public scrutiny to ensure there are not errors that you miss. Thank you.
Got it. We all have the same goal, which is to get it out as soon as possible.
All right, and that's the end of our questions. I'll throw it back to the members for some closing remarks.
Oh, I think we covered a lot, so I'm just going to say thank you for the great questions, and thanks for helping to communicate to all of our constituents and everybody throughout the state the important work that is being done in the legislature. We're going to just keep working as hard as we can over the next week and a half to help build opportunity and prosperity for the people of Washington State. I'm optimistic of where we are at this point, and look forward to talking with all of you in the coming week and a half as we get to sine die.
And for us, the same. Thank you so much for your questions and for your reporting on what we're doing here in the legislature. And again, I think the final message I have is that we're, as a legislature, committed to focus on things that were a challenge before the pandemic, recovery coming out of the pandemic, and making sure we have a stronger economy moving forward. So I think we are feeling good about being able to deliver on that in these last weeks here.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for sticking with us, and we'll see you next week.